Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Territories Talk for today, April 23rd, 24th, 2024. April 24th, 2024. I hadn't noticed that. That's interesting. Hello, ladies and listeners everywhere. This evening, we have with us a woman who she's a lawyer. She's involved in financial services. Really, really interesting topic looking forward tonight. But before we get into speaking with Ms. Natalie, let me welcome you all and let me just thank our media partners. Cayman Marl Road, Radio TCI in Turks and Caicos, Montserrat Radio, ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio FM 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Saba, PJFE FM 93.9, and Barbados, CBC Channel 8. Those are media partners around the Caribbean. And as always, we are looking for more media partners because the whole point of Territories Talk is that we reach all of us everywhere. We see ourselves as one big Caribbean family. And so although we are coming out of what are known as the United Kingdom Overseas Territories primarily, we see ourselves as part of the Caribbean family. And so our work is intended to bring us all together. My co-host this evening, as always, is Shaina Smith Archer from the BVI. We do not have tonight our other co-host, who is Chris Famous from Bermuda. He's off doing something else. But we are, as always, excited to be here. Shaina, will you introduce yourself and then we'll get back to Miss Natalie?
All right, so good evening to all our viewers, listeners, because we also have radio in here. So again, we're really excited that we have been expanding, and we haven't had a women in leadership in a while. So I'm definitely looking forward to our conversation tonight, Miss Shirley, to see what knowledge and wisdom will be imparted.
Okay, we lost your audio for a minute there, Shaina.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a slight delay. You go right ahead.
Excellent. Now, in full disclosure, let me announce that I know Natalie. Natalie's mother and I have been friends for a long time. And while Natalie was in school in Montserrat, I wasn't in Montserrat though when you were in school, Natalie. I was away. I was living abroad. I just did something to my eye. I'm not sure what. And so I have watched and heard of Natalie as she's doing her work and building her life. I'm proud of and amazed by the work she's doing for a number of reasons. One, because still, although there are many, many women in law everywhere in the world, it is still very much considered a thing that men do. And financial services, of course, and there's no question, it's all about the men. The men own the money, the men run the world financially. And so I'm really excited to be talking to you, Natalie, tonight, because I want to get into how it is that you chose financial services rather than the court. I mean, knowing you, I figured you would make a really good barrister, but you chose financial services. And so talk to us about you and let's begin with the basics. Why did you choose this?
All right, so good evening, afternoon. Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Shaina, for inviting me. Shirley has brought this to my attention some months ago. Wasn't quite sure what it's about, but I said, yes, I'll come along and have a chat. And I hope this to be a chat. As for me, Natalie Glizenhirn-Augustin, Shirley alluded to the fact that I have a Montserratian background. That's by my mother. I'm multifaceted in the fact that I have a Jamaican father, a former German stepfather, and was married to a St. Lucian. So that brings me full circle as to all the various names I have. Law is something I'm doing now. My first choice was international relations. I wanted to be a diplomat. Years ago as a child, I saw a picture of a person sitting in this round room with little flags in front of them and little buzzers and glasses of water and their names saying where they're from. And I was just fascinated and I wanted to do that. And so I started off and my first degree is in international relations and German. And that was where I was heading for. If I was going to start in the region, join the OACS, then maybe CARICOM and get through that way. If I stayed in England, I would have gone through the civil service there. And then a tragedy happened in our family. And I think the only way I could overcome it was to be involved in the law because my hands were tied. Montserrat being a dependent territory, has to follow English law, and we do not have the death penalty, which is the only thing I could see at the time. So I pivoted and thought, well, I'm going to have to sort of be involved in something that maybe I can at some point in my life change things in Montserrat. And went off and started a new degree and became a lawyer. So there I was with this shiny, brand new law degree, and decided that I want to come back to the Caribbean. And a bit of a battle because, as you can see from the accent, still very much the English girl. And so I found it difficult to transition from, England to the Caribbean, just from not in the law, because law is law, but just to settle in and, find different ways of working. And so having worked for one or two firms, I decided, the only way I'm going to do this and stick to it would be to sort of maybe just do it on my own somehow. Mm-hmm. So without the usual benefit of having gone to, let's say, UWI and having that connection throughout the Caribbean and different territories of having, a contact here and a contact there, I kind of just sort of started. With a few people that my then ex-husband knew. And, I am here today. So,
excellent.
Shirley, you asked why financial services. That's a whole different story.
Okay. All right. Shaina?
Okay, so I'm listening keenly because it was one of those things when I graduated from high school, because I had top honors. Persons were talking about either being a doctor or a lawyer, and I'm it's insightful that it's something where, because of something that happened to you in terms of your personal experience, that you chose to go into this field and has stuck with it. So in terms of I guess continued impact, how are you giving back to the community, maybe through your profession?
Things like this. Well, small island. Behind the scenes, I think I've sort of advocated for us somehow having a lot more mentorship programs. Possibly could put my hand up to say and be guilty that I'm not pushing myself enough to get involved in them. But when I can, when I do, I do sort of give my best. I'll try my best to give back that way. It's about the only way I think you can do is to get into the schools, get into the those little girls programs and or boys programs, to speak to them, to guide them, to give them the truth, not the suits truth of what law looks like, but the actual real life. This is actually what being a lawyer is about. If that sort of answers your question, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, let me ask you something, Natalie. I think one of the things I know about you is that you love life, you love cultural things. You're very much involved. You're very much involved in carnival and things like that, the jazz week and jazz festival and so on, which I think is wonderful, because what often happens, it's more visible to us in the Caribbean, but it happens pretty much everywhere. Women get to a certain point in our lives, whether it's age or stature in our work and so on, and we are expected to, quote unquote, behave. I mean, we're expected to behave all the time. But I remember, being speaker and being told you can't just walk around how you like, I remember once I was coming from the beach. I stopped at a bar, which I've known since I was a child. It was Saturday afternoon, like 3:00 in the afternoon. I wasn't wearing any shoes. I got out the car, walked maybe 8 yards into the bar. And this guy said to me, "You can't be walking around without shoes. You're the speaker. How can you do that?" He'd probably seen me do it a million times, right?
Yes.
How do you navigate that? You run your own law firm, which is a big deal anywhere, and a big deal for a woman. And yet you easily and seamlessly engage in all the cultural and carnival and fun parts of life. How do you navigate that?
I think because I don't label myself. So I'm not a woman in law or a leader in something. I'm just Natalie Augustin. I get up in the morning and I do what I've got to do. Yes, I've got a law firm, open the door, the staff and team come in. We've got a job to do. and that's it. And once outside of that, then I'm a human as anybody else. And I think too many people take themselves too seriously. And for me, it's a matter of, so long as I command the respect of my team and my clients, and try not to disrespect anyone, anything that I do outside of my work is about me. People talk about work-life balance. Well, I've got that balance sometimes tips in the wrong way, as Shirley has alluded to. But I think it's about taking yourself too seriously. I mean, what I do is I perform a job, as anybody else does. A teller is a teller. Someone in the supermarket is a supermarket. I'm a lawyer. I do what my clients need of me, and that's pretty much it. Our societies are very small. So as you said, you got out of the car and somebody immediately recognized who you are and said, you can't do that. Now put that somewhere in England, in the United States. You may or may not be recognized, or people don't even care. Yeah, because everyone's so busy getting on with their lives and to be looking at what you're doing and what the next person's doing. But yes, in these smaller islands, you're known by the car you drive, the number plate on your car, and everything else like that. Whereas, I can go to a nightclub in London, possibly be dancing next to a judge and would not know.
Yeah.
And he would not be concerned and be enjoying himself, or she. And likewise I am. But in a small society now, you're immediately labeled and known. And then now it's for you, I think, to sort of decide whether or not you're going to live up to that label. I am a lawyer, so I must behave in this way and not do that and no longer do this. Or I am just Natalie. And okay, well, I don't work an 8 to 5, but whenever I'm dedicated to my work, I'm doing my work. And outside of that, I play or live. I'm going to call it live.
Yeah, live, exactly. And
Yes.
I really admire that, because I see it so often that we just women just stop. And it's really important, I think, partly because our cultures as small islands are so vulnerable and so delicate, and they require constant attention and constant engagement from the people, from us as we move forward. And so I'm really, really excited when I see people who continue to engage, because for me, it's one of the ways in which we ensure that these things that belong to us remain ours. Because, for example, we're talking financial services, there are all kinds of laws and regulations out there that come to us that we don't have any say in, pretty much. That's the other question I have to ask you. And I won't ask you much more about that. But I ask this because as British Overseas Territories, Shaina will know this, we are subject to this, things that have nothing to do with us. People talk about yesterday on Monday, 2 days ago. The budget speech was given here in Montserrat, and the Premier alluded to the IMF, and I'm saying, but IMF, we can't even talk to the IMF. So what's that got to do with us? But when the IMF and the OECD and the Basel people make their laws, they affect us. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely.
Well, I just want to interject real quick before on that last point, though, because I think it's something that is important that we kind of draw a highlight up through, where we help our young women understand. Because for me, Shirley, it's not so much about being a delicate society. It's all the patriarchal society we were raised in, where, the little girls were supposed to stay home, play with dollies, learn how to cook, do the laundry, be a good wife when they get married, and raise children. So it's sort of, when we go out now as professionals, and we're still not being perceived as equal, even though we are equal. You see, because it's just amusing sometimes for me. Again, I'm in the construction industry, so when I show up on a job site, hard hat and boots on, just like everybody else, because that's what we're required to wear, there's still this type of perception that I'm too fragile to be there.
Yeah.
You understand? Right. Because again, this is how we're socialized from childhood coming up. And a lot of this, a lot of these things are still lingering. So I completely relate to what you're saying, Natalie, because there's always these expectations of you because of, again, some label somebody puts on you, or feel that because of your position, you still can't be down to earth anymore. You become elevated somehow and lose touch with the earth. So, you can't socialize with the lowly people and those types of things. And I mean, really, those things really go all the way back to the plantation in terms of a mindset where one class of people are better than another, when all of us, our blood runs red.
That's it. Well, I'll tell you a very short story. And I'm literally sitting on my hands tonight to not do what I usually do because I'm very animated when I speak. So I'm like, hands down, Natalie. Keep
Right
going.
ahead, we all do.
But I am like this. So
She
there was a time when maybe, you know, I'll leave work, go to the gym, and then maybe meet a friend somewhere and have a drink. Groseley, like nice little fishing village, and on Tuesdays, some of the big boys, you know, will sit around and have their drinks because it's okay for them. So there I'll be, you know, amongst them all and talking and chatting, and my hands flying around, and oblivious to who's about and not really concerned because I'm having a conversation. And then sometime after, I get a call from a since deceased judge. And he says, I need to have a word with you. I'm aware of your family. I'm like, okay, I know who you are now, right? And he didn't use the word complaint, but a colleague came to him, a male colleague, concerned about the fact that, you know, it more or less saying it's unbecoming of me to be sitting on a bar in Groseley on a Tuesday night, being all animated and whatever else it is. I'm just like, excuse me, what?
Yeah.
So first of all, I thought, well, not quite your place to be, you're not my father, to be telling me how to behave. But I'm actually more disturbed about the fact that this male colleague saw it best to come to
necessary.
you and more or less, you know, say, you know, well, have a word with her. I'm like, about what was I doing though?
Yeah.
You know, so is it that only the boys can do that, can go for a drink after work and sit down all night and play dominoes and ha 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 ha,
and there was probably some assumptions being made because, you know, the conversation looked a bit lively, so, you know, one too many, you know.
Yes. So it took me back for a millisecond, and I thought, no, I'm not going to listen to this. I thank you very much, but I can assure you that I've got this, you know, and when I choose to have a drink at a bar on the side of the road, I will. And if I choose to stay home and have a drink quietly, I will as well. But I don't think that has any reflection on the work that I do and me being a professional at the bar. That was the end of that conversation.
Yeah.
I've always watched that colleague with one eye.
Yeah, that happens so much. There are these restrictions that women are forced into. And, you know, you talked about mentoring a little bit earlier. Shaina, let me just get back. One of the things about mentoring, that women who, as we rise in our professions, find that part of what we want to do is we want to mentor, we want to help the other ones come along. But we are spending so much time, we're having to spend so much time and energy maintaining and not being complained upon by the boys and not being, you know, not losing ground because it gets kind of difficult. And in the Caribbean, where, again, we have these small societies where everybody knows everybody gets involved in everybody's life. And St. Lucia is small. Montserrat's even smaller, so you can understand what I mean. It makes it really, really difficult, but it is important, I think, for the Caribbean that we begin, it's critical that we begin to look seriously at women's leadership. I heard you say earlier, Natalie, you were just doing that, you haven't thought of it this way. But the reality is that once you're doing really good work, you run your own firm, you're doing good work on your own, you are leading, right? And so therefore there is an aspect that, planned or not, is just part of your life. And the Caribbean needs a lot of that. Now, how we get to the place where women's leadership is accepted as normal as men's is a question. Let me toss out to both of you. Both of you, Shaina and Natalie, what do you think? How do we get there?
I think we're there. I think we're there, but we're still somehow comparing ourselves to the Western world or the first world, whatever else it is, not realizing that, especially within the Caribbean. When I look around, and I wrote an article a couple of months back and did the figures then, can't remember them right now, but particularly in St. Lucia and in the Caribbean, women in leadership, percentages are far greater than men. We just somehow don't notice it. Yes, I'm in St. Lucia, I call what we have the petticoat bar. So from our Chief Justice, I think she's just recently retired, down, Court of Appeal judges, the High Court judges, the magistrates, and even us at the bar. I think we far outnumber the men. And I'm sure this can run through in many of the other professions as well. But what happens is that, as you say, we're busy doing our work, and then many times you sort of run home to, you know, look after the kids and do this and do all the bits and pieces as well. And so you're not seen publicly. So when you look back, who you see are like the guys walking around town and look at me, I'm this and I'm that, and you get to see them all the time. When there's something on TV, it might be, if two of you worked on something, the man might get pushed forward to be seen, but you're right there. And we don't shout enough. We don't want to be seen sometimes. We're happy to know that, well, I kind of worked along with him as well, but it's okay, he can take all the glory. And that's our problem. I would not say we're not leaders. Yeah, I think we are far outnumber the men by now in the region. And I know I've seen many, what's the word I'm looking for? Not articles, but where it shows, the figures show that we actually do, particularly in St. Lucia.
Yeah, I know. And UWI has been graduating significantly more women than men for a very long time. So this conversation about women getting educated now rather than as opposed to before. But let me just tell you a quick story, and then Shaina, I'll bring the question back to you too. A few years ago, this was maybe 7 years ago, Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians meeting in St. Kitts. We were looking for a Caribbean woman to be the head of the chair of the CPA, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and a Caribbean woman, well-known and powerful Caribbean parliamentarian, informed me that Caribbean women are just not ready for that kind of leadership. I was seriously taken aback, and I don't think I've said 15 words to her since then. Because there was a group of us women there, all very competent and capable from all ages. We had women. There's one parliamentarian from Trinidad who was like 23 or something. St. Kitts had young people, and then there were older women. She was one of the older ones, and she also was a lawyer. And her take was that we're not ready for that kind of leadership. Natalie, I agree with you. We are, and we have been involved politically in all the industries and so on forever. We are not being seen. Shaina, how do we get? Yeah.
Well, I think it starts with what Natalie was saying, where one is for us to see ourselves as such, and also for us to start to recognize each other. Because oftentimes what you will find is that women who might be in a position to recognize, your achievements and your accomplishments, we still have this competition thing going, eh? So, and that was one of the reasons even for us starting to have a specific episode to recognize women who are leading the charge in their specific area. So it might not be in top leadership, because for me, I'm looking at things like when you see the pictures that come back from the heads of government meeting, whether it's OECS or CARICOM, how many females are in that shot? So it's like we know we are at different tiers of leadership, but I think, the pinnacle is once we're from the top down, that we have, we're seeing ourselves in these pictures and being represented is one of those things that is important. Because, even something as simple for me in terms of if I'm hosting a talk show or maybe moderating a panel, I always have gender equity in the back of my mind, because I realize everybody's tendency, including women, is that we will look for men as experts on a particular topic. So it's something that starts with us in terms of our sorority as women in leadership or in management, wherever we find ourselves, to not be afraid to recognize, when we see leadership, regardless of the gender, that we're making sure that we're being intentional about it. And also, again, now grooming our young women, our girls and young women, to come up and think of themselves as being a leader. You don't have to take the vice or the deputy position and feel that you're going to be chastised because you seem to be too aggressive, because we get labeled if we try to advance ourselves in our profession or in anything. For us is, if the boy comes and he says he wants to be the team leader, it's no question, because again, a lot of these things are still the residue of the patriarchal society, when we were really not allowed to do many of the things that we're allowed to do now. So for me, that's, when I speak with my nieces, I'm always, asking them to see what kind of attitude they have about, the things that they're involved in. Don't be afraid. I remember one of the learned attorneys here, J.S. Archibald of blessed memory. I remember coming into an event at the college and I sat in the back. And when he saw me afterwards, he was like, "Where were you?" So I was like, somewhere in the middle, in the back, drifting. He was like, "Never be afraid to come to the front of the room." It's like the front of the room is not reserved for anybody in particular. You are here and you should present yourself as being, I deserve to be to the front of the room, and try to break up. Because again, in your mind, growing up as a child is always you kind of try to find the side or the back versus being seen as, because again, it comes with expectation. But that's okay. Once you know yourself, as Natalie described, or like who you are, and it's all about being authentic for me now. As I'm in my 40s, starting to be comfortable with me. Everybody's not going to be happy with you, with everything that you do or say. But as long as you are happy with you, then that is who needs to show up and be bold and proud with whatever it is you're doing. Mm-hmm. See, I got people like Shirley as my example.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me just remind people, this is Territories Talk for April 24th, 2024. And our guest is Ms. Natalie Glizenhirn-Augustin from Caicos and Glitzlaw in St. Lucia. Yes. You can listen to us. You can watch us online. Shaina, run that thing for me again, please. You can watch us online on social media and listen to us on all our media partners. Cayman Marl Road on Facebook, Radio Turks and Caicos, Montserrat's ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands, CBN Radio FM 90.9 on Channel 82 in Bermuda, PJFE 93.9 in Saba, and CBC Channel 8 in Barbados. All right, so question. Let's assume we have a Caribbean in which everything is as it should be. There's parity, there's equity, there is opportunity. There are no questions about what women can and cannot do or should and should not be doing. What would you be doing in that situation? Natalie and Shaina, both of you. Perfect. Everything's perfect. You can do whatever you want. Nobody will even look twice just because you're a woman. They look because you're doing it well or not, but not just because you're a woman. What would you be doing?
I'll let Shaina go first.
I was about to say, I don't know that there's anything that I would be doing differently, because it's always been one of those situations where I find myself having to be a trailblazer sometimes, So again, women in engineering, I can probably count them on my two hands in the Virgin Islands. It might be one hand. So, when I went away and studied engineering, it wasn't anything where I had an example to show me that women can do this. But this was something where, I understood. I love maths. I love science. I did very well at it. I mean, at one point, let's say my calculus classes, my teacher was asking me if I was repeating the class because it's something where most, other students would struggle with. But for some reason, I was just like, this, learned it, kept going. So it's for me, it's really one of those where I'm probably living in a space where it's already like that for me. So I'm living into it. Yeah. Because the thing that I find is that if we wait for the perfect timing and the right timing for things, then we will never do anything. So it has to be, I believe, being the change that you want to see. So if I have to be the one that gets out front with the cutlass sometimes, then, my grandfather taught me well.
Natalie?
Yeah, I'm not that serious. I would have trained my team to the hill, and I'll be out there, be on a boat, traveling from island to island, enjoying life, and in between checking in to make sure things are still running, and then calling it. I'm just on, client care visits here, there, and everywhere. But that's me. That's the true Natalie sort of thing. Got to pay the bills, you got to work. But yeah. I do like Shaina's answer. Yeah, I think I'm doing mostly what I'd like to do. As I said, I was kind of thrown into it. I did want to be a diplomat, but then that's the travel part that came in as well. I had this vision of, being posted here, there, and everywhere in the world. So the way I've been able to craft my firm and bring in the financial services part of it, which takes me off to conferences here, there, and everywhere, and I'll pick one in the furthest corner of the world just to get to it. To build knowledge, but then to also be able to do the travel and learn. I just love the world. And if I can marry the two, which I think I've done really well, to continue to gain the knowledge, but I choose the furthest points of the world to do that in, and then bring it back to the Caribbean, I think I'm winning.
Yeah. I like that answer. I like what Shayna said too. I'm doing what I would do anyway. I like that. Somebody has a comment here that they're loving this content. Caribbean women seem to be enjoying a better experience in leadership compared to our counterparts in the developed world. Is that true?
Oh,
It might
yes.
be. I had a story actually. I thought of while Natalie was speaking. I was actually speak at a gathering for Women International Women's Day this year, and I was saying to them while preparing for it, while oftentimes again in small communities like ours, we don't think about gender inequality. We just tend to think of women have this role, men have this role, and that's it. So we can't take for granted now that we may not have it at the levels that we see elsewhere, but we have to maintain what we do have. Because whatever amount of gender equity and equality you have, you can easily lose it because, again, we're not being intentional in terms of how we raise our boys and girls to, again, think equally. And you don't have a rule where one has to do the housework and the other one doesn't have to learn because somebody's supposed to come and take care of it. I shared with them, my mom taught everybody how to wash their clothes, how to cook. So when we went off to college, she didn't have to worry about anybody starving or not having clean clothes because it was about life skills, So when I was finished, the bank president, who is a good friend of mine, she shared with them that, she went away to a conference. And while she was in the back with the other speakers, one of the other speakers turned to her and asked her if she could get him some coffee. Because the assumption was she was somebody's assistant.
Not a presenter.
Yeah, so she had to clarify for him that no, she is here as a presenter as everybody else, and he'll have to find assistance elsewhere. So and I said, see guys, I said, so here in our little community, we're kind of sheltered and we don't necessarily think about these things being an issue. But the wider world, where again it's a lot more, I think the influence of in terms of these gender specific roles are still being held on to. That women shouldn't be in politics because it's rough and tumble and you're too fragile, and versus because my mom, she was so hesitant when I started to get involved in politics. Meanwhile, she's the one that taught me politics because she was always listening to the news, could tell you what the politicians need to do. This is the policy that needs to happen because she's an educator. So she's always been that type of person. I just took it to the next step. And actually now say, well, okay, I'm going to get on the stage and start to make some of these decisions. So that for me was where it's like, when we go into the wider world, again, I went to school, and in engineering school, I'm a double minority. I'm a African descent and a woman, because again, for that area of study, it was primarily men. So it's that's why for me it's like, I have to live into this thing that eventually I will see more women, and I'm always looking for opportunities to encourage young women to get into engineering, because for me it's something that came very natural based on what I like to do in school. But sometimes we we hear about it and think engineering is so hard. The same thing with law. It's so much studying to do, and again, we don't know if we can sustain it because it's so many years of education. But whatever it is you set your mind to do, definitely, we need to go for it.
Yeah.
But to the point in the chat, it's quite right, because let's say England, had I done what I'm doing now in England, every time I make a move, it'd be like, bravo, well done, and she's great, she's a woman, and look at her, shine. And in St. Lucia, as I said earlier on, you're just naturally doing what she's got to do. So I think it allows you to be a better leader, because you're not thinking about it, you're just doing what you have to do. Whereas in large societies, you really have to sort of sit and struggle and fight and make an assertive effort to say, well, I am a woman, I am going to be better, and I'm going to show them how great I am. And then when I get it, if you don't pat yourself on the back, you're looking for someone to do it for you. And so therefore, it's all this, you've got so many women societies and women in this and women leaders and women everything. And when you told me that we'll come on this chat, I'm like, well, here they go again. This is leader thing and this women thing. I mean, like, and I don't think there probably, maybe there is, but there'll be very, very few societies I can think of, Lucia. and maybe even the wider Caribbean, that are like specific for women. You know, be it generally or be it at a professional level, it's the Bar Association, not the female lawyers and the male lawyers. You know, it's the accountants. We haven't got to segregate that way. Fortunately, we haven't got to go even further and say, you know, it's the Black Female Lawyers Association sort of thing. So we haven't got those sort of barriers to even think about. So you're able to just sit down and do your work and do what you've got to do and get on with it, as opposed to everything that you do saying, I've got to beat this, I've got to be better than that, I've got to do this, which in itself can hold you back than focusing on the real, you know, goal ahead of you. So that was quite a good point there. But yes, well, I'm an only child, so I'm not, you know, that possibly also helps as well, that I didn't have anyone, you know, lie, push in the front to try and follow. It was all what I do, you know. I couldn't blame anybody else. If I broke something, you broke it.
Yes.
You know, so you learn accountability and everything else like that, and you take that into, you know, your everyday life and work. That's for me anyway, experience.
I like what I'm hearing. I like that idea, because it can get tiring. I mean, I've lived and worked in the United States, and there are all of those. I did my master's at a women's college, and it was set up for women. It was a business school. The women who started the business school were among the first group of women who were graduated from Harvard Business School, and one of them was from the Caribbean. She was from Guyana. She's on the Caribbean, same thing. She's from Guyana. And there is, in fact, Natalie, you're right, there is always this having to see how you match up or figure into or are contributing to the African American Association, the Women's Association for this, the, you know, Black sociologists, Black journalists, or female journalists, Black female journalists. It really could take a lot of time and energy. You're perfectly right. So that we don't have to have that in the Caribbean. I had not actually thought of that. I had not. And that's probably because having spent so much time in the United States, it's kind of almost always there. I'm not quite sure that it ever gets turned off, but you are perfect. That is a positive, I think.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah. So that's why when we have these forums, I keep thinking like, what do I say? I don't know. How do I speak to it? And I can understand that you had the same forum elsewhere. There'd be so much to say and so many, you know, experiences to speak about. But I don't think I could consider anything that I do an experience in that regard. It's a learning curve for what I do in my profession, but not because I am a female or outside of here, a Black female. It's just, I'm a lawyer, you know.
And that's the important point, because especially because we have, again, a majority in terms of what demographics is different than in the developing. So it's always these groups are you know, it's kind of like bringing the small number of us together, because you're trying to find some kind of strength and solidarity and support around yourself, because you always like you're trying to fight off, you know, some type of oppression or marginalization. But you know, in the Caribbean, it's more of a accepting environment almost, you know, and you are more or less recognized based on your achievements and your merit. So again, the viewer agreed, you know, it's amazing what you can achieve by reducing the opacity when you lift the veils of race and gender.
Precisely.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, this is lovely. This is lovely.
So Shirley, we have persons from all over tonight. We just want to pause and recognize them so we don't miss anybody towards the end. We have in Tortola, Cayman Island, Reading, England,
Reading,
California, UK.
There you go.
Hey, Mom, it's past your bedtime.
She said she was going to be staying up late.
Well, we have Cayman, NYC. Oh, awesome. Yeah, we definitely have everybody tuning in tonight. Jamaica.
What's my hearing?
Cayman Islands. Awesome.
Oh,
and I think this is KY, Cayman again. All right. Well, we're grateful for all our viewers, especially our sisterhood that seemed to show up tonight.
Yeah. All right. So one last question, and then I just want to just have fun, Shane, and then you can think. There still is, however, the question of how we in leadership we've made strides in education, we've made strides. As women, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're doing it well, we're being recognized, acknowledged, we are not having to deal with lots of things that our peers in other parts of the world have to. There still is this undercurrent, though. There's this undercurrent that pits us against our men. And I mean this in sort of general sense. Right now, there is, for example, we're talking about technology. Yeah.
Just broke.
Even here in the we're still finding that men are being it's more easily accepted that men do the computer stuff, the communications technology. We want to create a society in the Caribbean, I believe we all do, where we are doing what we do on par with everybody else, because we are clear that we are at least as competent, at least as capable as anybody else. This one last thing about the upper echelons of power that Caribbean people need. And right now I'm thinking of, for example, Shane, I think it was you who said, I'm talking politics here, by the way.
Yeah, I know you don't really know.
Because ultimately everything that we do ultimately comes through there. We have a lawyer here on law. That's what politicians, parliamentarians, they make laws and then we follow them, right? And if you will, lawyers are sort of our intermediaries there. But we need to get, I think, do we need to have laws, policies that help and support these last little bits of the puzzle that we are having struggles with? You look at a picture of the leaders of the overseas territories, there's one woman. You look at the leaders of the OECS, there is not one. You look at CARICOM, there is exactly one. We need to get past that. So although we're making strides in all these other areas, and I mentioned tech just because part of what we need to do in the Caribbean is begin to use technology, really seriously use it to keep ourselves connected. And we are finding that boys are the ones that are rising towards the top more and more in that area. How do we get our women not our men, how do we get our women so comfortable with power, not success? We all acknowledge we're capable, intelligent, and successful. How do we get our women so comfortable with power that we get in and say, yes, I can run this country. Let me do this. Because we do need more women running the countries.
The thing is, I mean, it's a question that they're asking. It's a question they're probably asking all around the world. I mean, in my lifetime, I think of England, I don't know, 55 million people or more, 100 million people. And between Margaret Thatcher and then the other two that sort of came fast in succession in recent days, that's been it. Yeah, so they've got a larger pool to choose from. They've managed that. America, none. Yes. So again, I'm going to say we've done very well, in the Caribbean, and maybe shouldn't be measuring ourselves against them and using it as a barometer. If we look within and say, actually we have done. So going back from Dominica, what was her name?
Name Charles.
Yes, Eugenia Charles. How could we not? We shouldn't be stumbling on that one. We should not have been.
No, but I'm saying, we forget. We do forget.
Yeah.
We sit down and say, well, actually, Shirley, look at all these women leaders that we have had. Yeah, and look at all the ones that are sitting there. Be it in some of the top organizations. The Secretary General of CARICOM is a female. So there's a lot more that we do. But again, we don't shout about it loud enough. That it's in your brain. We have to remember Eugenia Charles. Like, what's her name again? Shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right. So it's there. And we are there, but we just don't do enough to be recognized, and that it becomes like normal as eating your cheese sandwich, and there's a prime minister.
Yeah.
when we look at the local politics, sufficient women go up for it. And, I've been here in St. Lucia for 28 years, I think. And it seems, balanced enough, I think. And it's that choices. And as you say, we are, apart from being raised to be particular things, we are made differently as well. So I guess, our interests generally, men v women, are probably something from within us that, I train to be, and I want to be this, and I will go after what I want to be. It may not be a politician, but I'm going to darn well be the top of, at the upper echelons of whatever I choose to be. Yes, it'd be great to have female leaders, but if you have enough of them just below, because they're the true ones who really, really, truly make the laws, the decisions, not that one puppet, I don't call it a puppet, then I think we do good enough. So if we take away the actual top leader, that prime minister or that premier, and then look at the level below where they're actually sitting there in parliament and making those decisions collectively, if there are enough of us sitting there, we actually are doing far better than having that one person whose strings they're pulling, and underneath that one woman is then a whole, a bunch of men. We lose. So I think somehow, you can do sufficient just there in certain circumstances. And I think politics for me is one where I always see it as, that's the guy, that's a leader, but, it's really pulling the strings. And if enough of us are pulling the strings, then we win.
Got you.
Well, I guess, my perspective is a little bit different because we're still in a place in our society where not enough women have pursued, politics as a career as yet. Again, because of the misperceptions that it's treated as in terms of women aren't supposed to be in politics. And to the question that Shirley asked in terms of becoming more comfortable with power, it's along those same lines where, again, we're not training ourselves from a young age, because this is something for me from my community looking out into the wider Caribbean, even, women that, let's say maybe from Barbados to Lucia, Jamaica, the larger islands, it's a different mindset. It's something where, again, you're trained to go after it and pursue it. There's nothing there that restrains you. But oftentimes, again, in a smaller community, it's who does she think she is? Why does she think she can do this particular thing? Versus always being encouraged to do it. So it's not like you're settling for just below, but it's not that you can't do it, but it's sometimes, those expectations that kind of start to shape your thinking. Because I know that's something that I have always admired. Again, when I heard about, I would have learned in school, Shirley was the Speaker of the House, learned about Dame Charles being the Prime Minister, because then those were the names that we would have learned. And the fact that, those were the only female names among all the other male names that we had to learn, it was something for me where I was like, wow, a woman can do this. So it started to see examples, but it's almost as if there's not enough yet. And I think that's kind of what she's alluding to, because I know for me, when I look around in my community, that is part and parcel of what I see, to say that, we have, let's say, the public service, like you're saying, yes, full the permanent secretaries, majority, if not all, are women. Actually, no, we have women. But it still does make a difference when it comes to policy, because having worked in the public service, the mindset and the approach of a woman versus a man when it comes to certain subject matters, it is different. And I think we need to accept it for what it is, because you will get different results in terms of what the focus might be or what they look for. So, having had that experience is kind of one of those things where, yes, I want to see more people in the CARICOM picture that look like me.
Me too. So how do we get visibility? Natalie, if you're saying that visibility is part of the problem, and I agree with you, actually. I agree with you that it's concerned. A lot we don't see the women who are doing the work. Even in Montserrat, most of the permanent secretaries all along, a long time ago, they were mostly men. But as you've come along, they've been times when they were almost all women. The assistant manager at the bank, the deputy is the woman, the manager of such and such women, the loans manager is a woman. but the bank manager is a man. And Natalie's right. That's where the work gets done.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't know that we're doing that, if the young girls don't know that we are doing that, then it limits their scope. Because one of the things that continues to happen is our people keep leaving.
Mm-hmm.
We keep going off to Canada, United States, and England, and wherever else. Missing the opportunity here, because Natalie, you're also right. Part of what we do is we compare ourselves with the standards that come from there, because they're in the ethers around us, quite literally. So we need to become more visible. We need for our girls and our boys to see us doing this work, not feel threatened and that we're going to be taking over necessarily, but feel comfortable with it. So how do we become more visible and yet help them remain comfortable?
That's the question, Shirley.
I know that's right.
I'm thinking of, over the years, I've had junior associates and associates in my law firm. They come in, they go, they leave. And when I compare the men to the women, the females have always stayed in, done the work, put their 8 hours in. If you're going to go to court and come right back, and that's it. And the men, not too many of them, it'll be like, where's John? God knows. But you could see him outside, walking up and down with his bib on still, and, just making sure that the world can see what he does. Whereas we will be like, the fastest thing is to get that robe off and get everything off and beat them and in the office and get on with your work. So I don't want to use the word egos, but again, it's something that is totally different, I think, in men and women. Most you see it, that men have this natural ability to sort of like, look at me, I am Jack. Yes. Whereas women will kind of just say, I'm all right. I just, as I say, I'm nothing general. I just go to work and do what I've got to do, rather than saying, actually, you're both right. I've worked really hard, and look at me, and I've got this law firm, and I do this and I do that, and I travel around. And blah. You don't get that from me. Whereas men are more likely to make sure. So, hi, my name is Jack, and I do this. A woman would say, hi, my name's Natalie. Yeah. So that doesn't come out.
Yeah,
it doesn't come out. So it starts from that. That when we say, how do we get them to know? Well, we're our own, we could blame ourselves because we don't shout it out in the same way as a man will probably do. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing. Good for them. And if more of us will do it, and even me myself, then they will know. I can walk into a room full of people. They might end up knowing my name at the end of it, but then after, what does she do again?
Yeah.
They're going to ask somebody else. But I had the opportunity to say exactly what it is I do, who I am, and all about me. And I don't use the opportunity. I rather go, hi, get a little drink, and that kind of thing, but not get in there and sell myself. I think that's where we're probably not as good as men at selling ourselves.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, the networking part of that as well, because men will always be like, oh, I want you to meet my friend, Bill, because Bill is da 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 da, and Bill can help you do da 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 da. So the connectivity and all of those things in terms of building connections is also one of those ways for us to start to elevate, so that again we're recognizing each other and seeing the value and the worth that everybody brings. So it's never perceived as a competition with them. And it's the same thing now that has to happen on the other side, because like she's saying, I agree with that. We have to be the ones to elevate ourselves. We can't, at this juncture now, we can't wait for somebody to do it, and you have, again, when you show up, it's like you got to show up and be able to tell your own story. And in a humble way, because I think, again, that's all goes back to how we were socialized. You're told to be humble and to be modest.
Use your inner voice.
Yeah. Somebody else talk about you and tell your story. But again, if you don't have the people around you there in the same way, then yes, everybody's gonna go home and only have a first name and have no clue that Shirley was a speaker of a house, articulate parliamentarian. You study diplomacy as your background, and it's kind of like, oh. Okay. Missed opportunity. So yeah, that's definitely part of what we have, again, when we mentoring and grooming our young women to teach them how to present themselves, as a professional first and foremost. But again, not being afraid to be who they are and learning how to express that in a way that's comfortable for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important for us within our small societies and in terms of how we represent in the world, because ultimately that gets to be really important. Right? I'm thinking about Anguilla is doing elections this year. Montserrat's doing elections this year. America and everybody else. As a matter of fact, more than 50% of the world is having elections this year. And one of the things I'm looking at personally is what's happening with women. How many women are running? Who's winning? If not, why not? And all those things. But the reality is that our place in the world, our ability to succeed, to thrive, depends largely on connections, on relationships, and our relationships within our intra-regional relationships and our international relationships. And so perhaps this is a lesson not just for women, but for Caribbean people, when we are out there, that we learn to make ourselves visible in many ways, in more and more ways. Because we need the networking that you talked about, Shaina, the relationships that we talk about, and I think what you're saying, Natalie, is that women are much more, we're not focused. We work one-on-one. We do relationships. Men do projects. So when Shaina says that, I am so-and-so who does so-and-so, here's my friend who's such and such, they're thinking about the next job, the next project. Women are thinking, I like Shaina, I just want to talk to her. I don't care who she is or what she does. We just want to talk. So we need both of those. We need both of those things. So what I think is that we have to find a way as Caribbean people, as professionals, and sadly, it's always the women who have to do these things, who have to kind of lead us in these directions. So probably one of the roles that Caribbean women are going to have to play now is that. Find a way for us Caribbean people to present ourselves to the world, in the world, with who we are, what we are, why we are, how we are.
But surely I think the world is watching. We're just more and more now in all different genres of whatever. Actually, we are being seen and noticed and recognized, but we're not really converting that to our benefits. Yeah, so we'll talk about sports and music, but you can as well. That we are being recognized, and sometimes you sit back and say, like, that was a Caribbean guy, or that was a Black woman. You're like, wow, didn't know that. And then you think, like, that's really good. So and I'm going to keep repeating it, we're not doing enough, to pat our own backs and be out there and say, well, this is us. We wait until we're given that recognition from others, and then we say, oh yeah, we really are good.
The validation, like you need to be validated.
Says, yes. Why? Why do we do that? Why do we not, like, I've just built that. This is perfect. We're going to wait until somebody comes in and says, that's really great. And you're like, yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
That's what we tend to do, I think, as a region on too many scales. And then obviously then you could then trickle it down, man v woman again, since that's the talk from tonight. On waiting for that, you said it right, validation from others, to then not recognize your success sometimes, your achievements, your abilities, which we should be able to do ourselves. If you've worked hard at something and you know what you did was the best, then it's the best. And don't wait until somebody tells you that's really good. You know it was good because you worked on it and you know it's the best. And that's what
I have an old friend, a man, and a very much older man, told me a long time ago that, Shirley, if you're good at something, it's because A, you were born with the capacity to be good, or B, you had the capacity to learn. So you did the work and you learned, so don't be afraid, don't be ashamed, don't be shy. You don't have to be over there, you don't have to be arrogant with it, but own who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
I
have enjoyed this chat. We run out of time. I've enjoyed it. The time was just gone. It has just gone.
It always happens as soon as the conversation starts to get really good. Gotta go. But yeah, I think though this is a great note for us to end on in terms of, again, having that level of confidence, because it really does start with the self-confidence. And again, recognizing each other's confidence and not seeing it as anything negative, but being able to say, hey, I have a friend who will be a great guest for this show. And it just happened to be Natalie Augustin this month. You know, because again, we need to see each other in that way. And again, have no qualms about validating, because again, it does, you know, just to close off real quick, the whole thing of labeling developed versus developing, first world versus third world. Third world tends to think that first world has to validate them, not realizing all these things are made up.
Yes.
You know, they're completely made up. So, and in this 24th century, they don't have any value in my mind anymore, because, you know, we are up there with the greats. Again, like you're saying, we produce quality, we operate with excellence. So we don't need anybody to come and pat us and say, oh, good job.
Right.
You know,
do it ourselves.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So again, everybody, we thank you to all our viewers. They definitely enjoyed the show. So we have to bring Natalie back another time. We didn't get into financial services and all the politics. So next time for sure. But we definitely want to again thank all our media partners across the region: Cayman, Marl Road's Facebook page, Radio TCI, Montserrat, ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands, and that's US as well as the British. They listen to the CBN Radio FM 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Saba, PJFE FM 93.9, and Barbados' CBC Channel 8. So on behalf of our team, again, thank you for being here, Natalie. Chris sends his regards as always, guys. So if you don't see him, know he is always behind the scenes. So until next time, let's continue to inform and unite our overseas territory and the Caribbean family. Have a good evening.
Thank you, ladies. Thanks for having me. Good night.
Good night.